Oh, wonderful. There's Vicky. How are you?
Good morning, everyone.
How are you?
How are you? How's
Good, good to see you.
Looks like we have a good one.
It has been.
Yeah, right here. You can sit down.
No, but we already had a packet. That's okay.
While everybody's getting settled in,
We've got it.
if you're going to grab something to eat, you might want to do it really quickly while we're waiting for everyone to take off their coats and settle in, and then we can just start with the meeting and keep flowing without maybe having to get up and stop again for meals.
Absolutely.
Hi, Dorsey.
I'm fantastic. How are you? It's good to see you. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Long time no see. I know. How are you? Good.
Understand. I'll be here. Well, have a good night.
Just Janelle, a little heads up, right?
How are you?
We're gonna start.
And it's start. All right, everyone, we're going to begin in 1 minute.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Well, she gives notes.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome again to the Northeast Community Development Initiatives Oversight Committee meeting. We appreciate your presence, and just by way of kind of housekeeping tonight, we have some individuals who've called in on the phone. We want to acknowledge you in just a moment, or at least give you an opportunity to do so. Those of you who are on the phone, hopefully you have access to all of the packet of information we're going to be covering tonight. We don't have anyone in the audience at the moment, but as the night goes forward, it may change, and there may be individuals who will want to interact, and those moments in the agenda where there's that opportunity. However, we will go with what we have. So Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
and good to see you. So by way of identifying the numbers and the members of the Oversight Committee that are present, I'm merely going to ask you to say your name for the record that you are present. And we'll begin with those who are on the phone.
This is Con Lee with Main Street Alliance of Oregon.
Hi, this is Shannon Olive.
Good evening. To the left and around.
Jennifer Huang.
Jonisha Smith.
Haben will do.
Leisha Posey.
I'm Maurice Rami.
It should just stay on, Vicky. Whatever, if that light is on.
Red.
Yeah, it should be on. If it's red, it's on.
No, it's green.
It's on.
Vicki Gwynn, Legacy Emmanuel.
Dorsey Johnson.
Kimberly Moreland, Urban Project Manager.
Wonderful. So we have a sufficient number to be able to do the business we need to do. Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. So as you look at your agenda, we've got several things we need to cover tonight. I will not talk through each item on the agenda. We're able to secure that with our own reading. So let's go right into item number 2. And since Tori is not here, Kimberly will be taking that moment.
Happy New Year, everyone. It's so nice to see you guys. I also want to tell the folks on the teleconference that I just sent you a live stream link. And so if you wanted to look at the live stream, you'll be able to see the information that's on the PowerPoint or on the projector. So you'll be able to follow that as the meeting moves forward. But it's my pleasure to introduce Haben Waldru as the co-chair. She will be sharing this responsibility with Lisa Posey as they kind of divide up the responsibility of chairing the committee and helping to manage the Oversight Committee responsibilities. And so thank you, Haben, for your commitment to this committee, and we look forward to working with both of you.
Thank you.
Did you want to say anything?
No, I'm excited for the new year, and I'm excited for our new setup. The room looks amazing, and I'm looking forward to more community engagement and a new start and fresh new year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. We'll move right into item number 3.
All right, so,
Dr. Ho, I
Yes.
just want to say this is so great. I would never have to go to more meetings in person.
We'd love to have you come to meetings in person. Yeah.
okay, so let's move on to the meeting minutes from the December meeting. You should have those in front of you. If you want to take a moment to read over those minutes, I will take a motion to accept them when we're finished.
Yvonne will also have the minutes on the projector as well.
Do we have
You want to
the other
look at that one?
minutes?
No.
We don't have the November ones in front of us. There should have been 2 minutes for you to review, the one from November and the one from December. Because we did not have a quorum, we wasn't able to approve November and December. But the minutes were sent to you as part of the email that was sent out with all the meeting material. So, and Yvonne has them on the screen as well.
Are you looking for a motion for at the same time, or you're looking at individual motions?
I think that can be entertained by Madam Chair.
Let's do individuals. So let's start with December, since everyone has that in their hand. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept December's meeting minutes.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any questions? Does anybody have any corrections? All right, the motion is approved. All in favor of approving that?
Aye.
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 All right, approved. So then, if you don't have your November copy in front of you, you can use your phones, you can look up here on the screen, or you may have already had a chance to review it, and I'll give another minute, and then I'll entertain another motion to accept.
I'll make the motion to accept November's meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
Any questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Wonderful. So we've gone through 3 of the agenda items. Going to item number 4, which is old business or unfinished items. Maurice and Alicia, project charter and approval.
Okay, I can. Well, I know that we've gone through this project charter a few times, so we're not going to go through it again. We are looking for a motion to accept this charter. This charter, once it's accepted, we'll be able to do a lot of the work that we're hoping to accomplish with this committee. So we'd be looking for a motion to accept our draft charter.
Do we have a copy of it?
Yes.
There's a copy of the charter in your handout.
So
I know
is
there's
there a
some.
motion to accept this charter?
Alicia, sorry. I wanted to make sure that change, that the 2 and the 4 on the absences was corrected before we,
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second for that motion, or no?
Second.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So now for questions. Dorsey, you had a question?
no, I was just wanting to review it before I.
Please, take your time to review. Any questions?
Initial draft.
So there is a draft here, and then there's a second accompanying piece of paper that is update on charter changes.
Okay.
So these changes have been incorporated into your draft, if I understand correctly, but they're just on a separate sheet of paper to point those out clearly, what those changes are. So read through those changes on the separate sheet first, and see if you have questions there on what these changes mean for the charter or how they may affect your role.
What specific change are you looking for?
This is a section talked about the absences.
Oh.
And the 2, it was like something that was.
Should be under section 4, under attendance. I think, Dorsey, is what you're referring to.
Page 3.
Thank you. Okay. It was updated. Just wanted to make sure. I'm good.
Does anyone have questions around the proxy and what that means? All right, any other questions? All in favor of accepting this draft charter as our new charter for the CDI Oversight Committee?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so moved. We have our new charter.
Excellent.
Hey.
Excellent. We will go to section B, report outs. We'll just go right down the list. So, expansion, ICURA expansion, Jennifer. Any update?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report at this time. Thank you. Project Working Group will be deferred to Kimberly Moreland.
As you guys know, because we sent out an email sharing that Kara Stoudemire Phillips will be representing the committee on the Project Working Group, and Shanicia Smith will be our alternate. And they will have a meeting, their first meeting on January 31st. It will be an orientation. And at some point, they are planning to have a larger community forum, but that we'll receive more details after the Project Working Group have their first meeting. So that's pretty much all we have to report.
Is there a list of the Project Working Group?
You know, we can get that to you. They have selected 19 members, and from, I think it was a list of 24. And Leslie, do you want to? No, but there were 24. Yeah, 24 people, and there's 19 people who's serving on the Oversight Committee. I'm sorry, the Project Working Group.
And when did you say the first meeting was?
It's January 31st. And I believe it's going to be at the June Key.
Right, from 2 to 4:30.
From 2 to 4:30?
2 to 4:30.
Okay. And those meetings are open to the public, but, so.
And is that the time and place for all of the meetings, or is that just the orientation, or you don't know?
I'm not sure.
That's just the first meeting.
Okay.
Just the first meeting.
You have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know that there was some questions around all 19, knowing that they were on and committed to serving, so it sounds to me like they all are on board. And
Yeah, they've all been confirmed at this point.
okay, that's good to hear.
Any other questions?
So the alternative role basically is for those people who are not, who go off of the committee, then the alternatives will be able to be maybe considered as on the actual committee, right?
I need to say that again, I'm sorry. Can you speak into your mic?
Okay, I'm talking about, my role is going to be an alternate for that committee, so that means that you have a set number that represents, what is it, 12 or 13?
I believe it was 14 organizations.
14 organizations. So in the event that someone comes off the committee, then I'll take a different position in that?
Yes, if Karis decides or cannot attend a meeting or can no longer serve, then you would take her place.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, she would take her place per meeting, or only if Karis decides that she is?
Only if Karis decides. That's my understanding. You're representing the Oversight Committee, which is one of the 14 organizations.
So the 14 organizations, are they holding that position, or is it the individual in the 14 organizations? So in other words, if a member of the organization, are they representing both themselves, or are they representing the organization, and which one comes?
They're representing the organization.
Okay.
Any other questions for the Project Working Group? Okay, we will move on then to the Budget Advisory Committee. Maurice.
And I was unfortunately unable to attend that meeting, so I'm hoping, Kimberly, you were there to advise this group.
You know, I didn't attend the meeting. But we can report back next time.
Is there still another meeting to be had?
I think they were planning on having 3.
3 meetings?
So, but we could report out on what the decisions were there.
The meetings are really not for staff. We have a few managers who attend, but it's for us citizens and community members. So.
I'll report back next month.
We will keep note of that. Thank you. The next item is Item number 5 for public comments, and we don't have any public comments unless there's anything from Portland Housing Bureau Representative Ms. Leslie Goodlow. Not unless people have questions for you. Wonderful. Well, thank you. We're glad you're here. Thanks for attending. Let's go to item 6.
Okay, so Kimberly and I met about a week ago or 2 weeks ago to discuss the current state of the subcommittees. And so we kind of just wanted to take the opportunity to review those subcommittees and folks that are listed on the subcommittees. So you should have a document in your pile here that shows the current subcommittees. And next to each one, it says
Looks like
ongoing. Once a fiscal year, ongoing as needing, and once every 3 years. So the hierarchy is that the ones that are ongoing, currently in place right now are towards the top of the list, and the ones that have a more irregular schedule are at the bottom of the list. So if you just take a quick second to review that to see if your name is listed, if it's listed correctly. Also, you might want to take a brief moment to see if your name is not listed and you would like to be added somewhere. Just start thinking about that.
Madam Chair, do we know that everyone on the phone has this list, this information?
You should have received it in your email packet. So if you are able to view your emails right now, then you should be able to find it. It may also be in your binder because we have received this list before.
And if they're watching live stream, they can see it on the
screen.
on the screen.
I mean, if it's helpful, I can read them, but since we have plenty of time.
We do have.
Yeah, would you do that?
Sure. So for the Community Outreach Committee, which is ongoing, we have Shannon Olive, Shonisha Smith, Haben Wudu. And then for the Cultural Business Hub, which is also ongoing, we have Vicki Gwynn, sorry, Vicki. Jennifer Con Lee, Leisha Posey, Maurice Raming, and Ms. Shonisha Smith. For the Interstate Corridor Urban Renewal Area Expansion Subcommittee, we have Vicki Gwynn, Jennifer, Dorsey, Shannon, Leisha Posey, Shonisha, Kara Stoudemire Phillips. And then we have what we have as a new committee, which would be the Member Selection Committee, which will be working to find the 2 new members that will complete our committee and bring us back up to 15. And we currently have no one on that list, so you want to think about that a little bit. We can talk more in depthly about what that will look like. I'll let Kim talk about that.
Sure, we will have an email blast going out tomorrow, which will provide a link to an application form, and we are kind of prioritizing members to have real estate development and business ownership, and we also have revised the application to include a age group for 16 to 24. And on the application form, we are, saying that we're encouraging that youth in that age group will apply. So that should be going out tomorrow. And if there's any other considerations or specific skill that you want to target, let us know. When, I don't remember his name, the gentleman from the Albina Community Bank, when he left, we kind of lost that kind of business development. And Irene was more also a business owner. And so it would be great to replace those skill sets. So if there's others that you want to consider,
So
Michael,
this would be our youth representative?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And we chose the age group 16 to 24 because that's consistent with our workforce youth,
That was my,
youth group.
basic thing, why stop at 24, but it's youth. But
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you, Michael.
It's youth. Why stop at 24, but it's youth, so that's.
I don't know how we do it, but I would like to volunteer for this committee because we're no longer doing the charter update, so.
So I do have some sign-in sheets I'll pass along as soon as we get done reading the rest of these
Okay.
committees. So any more questions for the new member selection committee? So we're a little bit behind the gun on getting this process started. We wanted to try to get that out at the beginning of January. So it will be going out for sure tomorrow. And if you know of anybody personally that you think should apply for this, will we also get a link to the application?
Yes, you will. Anyone who's on our mailing list for the North Northeast Community Development Initiative, which is a pretty broad list and includes all of the Oversight Committee members.
Perfect.
I was going to say that we're asking for the deadline to be January 31st. So we would give them like 3 weeks to respond. So hopefully we can have that person on board by the next meeting. If the subcommittee could meet prior and select the individuals. Is that timeline too tight? Or we could have them available on board by March. Because I'm hoping that we could assemble the subcommittee to review the applications and select that individual by mid-February, and then we can have Kimberly Branham review our recommendation and have that finalized by our meeting, which is the 4th. Is it the 3rd or 4th?
It's the 3rd.
It's the 3rd, yeah. So maybe we have to back that up a little. It may have to be March, depending on how fast we can pull the subcommittee together.
Right, and allow enough time for people to respond to the application. Because today is the 19th, so the 31st is literally like 2 weeks, not 3 weeks, so.
So we can.
And tomorrow is Friday, people may be away from their emails, so. Depending on the response, if we have a huge response.
Yeah.
Then maybe we can move forward at the end of January, but if we don't, I think we need to at least allow for 3 weeks, so that we can talk to folks.
I think that would be fair,
Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks.
And even having that email go out a couple times.
Yeah, so we can maybe try to have someone on board by our March meeting.
Does that sound?
It sounds great, but who would be providing the outreach for that particular thing? Would it be Prosper Portland, or would it be this committee here?
Who would be responsible for the outreach?
Right.
And actually, we would send it out on our listserv, but you can share it with your network because you'll have the link. And so we can either provide you with a hard copy of the application, but you'll have a link that you can easily share with your network. Did
you have some concerns about people not being able to access the link?
No, I just wanted to know what would the process be, pretty much, for providing outreach and getting that person on board. Would it be something that we as a committee would be?
The subcommittee would lead out in conjunction with Prosper Portland. So once we receive the applications, the subcommittee will review those applications and determine, which individuals rank, however we decide to rank that. And then once we pick the 2 individuals, we'll give those names to Kimberly Branham to review, and then she
make the
final decision.
Okay.
So I have, so if we're trying to shoot for the February meeting, how about if we make the applications due by the 5th? Maybe the subcommittee meets like that Wednesday, which is the 7th. And then Kim can make her decision by the 12th, and then we have someone by the 15th.
Yeah.
I think we can do it. if we do the 5th, that's 3 weeks, 3 full weeks that we're giving people. And then we, as committee members, maybe we step up our outreach just because of the time constraints. But I just think it's very valuable for someone to be part of the process early on, especially since we're doing a fresh start kind of thing. So,
I agree. I think we could do that. And we'll share the link on our Prosper Portland website, on all of our social media platforms, so we'll get the word out. But it would be better if you could share it in your network, especially with different community organizations. So.
and we could also have the option, if by the 5th we didn't feel like the outreach was sufficient, we didn't get the applications that we needed, when we come the 19th, the 15th is the next meeting.
On the 7th.
We can say, hey, we didn't have the applicants that we needed. The outreach was weak. We didn't do the things that we set out to do, so we can push it another month. But I think it's a good goal to have.
Push it another month?
Well, if we don't have, if we haven't done what we needed to do, and if we don't have the applicants that we need, like, let's say maybe 10 people applied, then maybe we push it.
I think that's a plan.
And I think it's something
Great
that the subcommittee can decide at that point.
So far, we only have one person on the subcommittee.
Yeah.
Well, there would be some easy decision-making then,
Because if this was holding us up, we're not full staff.
It's not holding us up from
But
getting
it's slowing us
business
down.
done, but we would just like to get this out of the way at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, when you have a full committee, you most likely have a quorum at each meeting.
No doubt.
So are there any others who would like to be on the,
I'll do it.
you like to?
That sounds like a plan.
So is the Cultural Business Hub still something that's actively ongoing? Just because I don't want to stretch myself too thin by volunteering, but I remember a few meetings back hearing that it would be put on hold until the Hill Block site was decided on, or however that.
No, at this point, it's ongoing.
Okay.
The Hill Block is now kind of a separate project. At some point, it's going to return once they decide if they want to be, if that site will be amended into our URA, but that's down the road.
Okay.
All right, so any other questions about the new member selection committee? There's a sign-in sheet coming around now for that committee.
I actually have a question. Is there a number that we're comfortable with, like how many people in the subcommittee would be a good number?
To have on the subcommittee?
Yeah.
15.
I just know that there's a maximum, which is also, I think, quorum or less than quorum.
Okay.
Less than quorum.
So the minimum, I think, two.
So it would be 7 as a max.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but minimum, if 2 is all we have, 2 is all we have.
Oh, what?
Well, we already have.
I think 2 is fine because, you have Troy and I will.
You can send it around. And
So we'll just send it around.
Okay.
Okay, so if you turn to the back of the page, I'll continue on with the Community Livability Grant, which is once a fiscal year, and that's Jennifer, Vicky, Khan, Maurice, and Karis. The project charter is ongoing as needed, which is Jennifer, Maurice, Ms. Smith, Karen, and Haben. The North by Northeast Business Navigator, which is once every 3 years, is Dorsey, Leisha, Maurice, and Karis. So one that's missing off of here, I guess, would be the new impact study. There's actually 2 missing off of here.
Well, the impact study, I'm not sure because we kind of decided that, that it's going to be we drafted the scope of work. I'm not sure that needs to be a subcommittee. But if that's what you would like to do, that's fine.
So the impact study will still needed to be reported back to the larger committee, what the information that happens in those meetings in terms of determining the direction of the impact study, if I'm understanding.
But The reason why I was thinking maybe it's not a subcommittee, because you'll be working with a consultant to kind of draft the scope of work, and I thought maybe we could just continue with you and Maurice to do that.
Okay.
And at that point, when we hire a consultant, then they can kind of go with it and report back.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really see that as a kind of committee.
Okay. All right, and the last one that we have, which is not on your list, would be the Investment Allocation Subcommittee. You tell us a little bit about that one?
Yes, and the reason why I left that off because it hasn't been approved by the Oversight Committee. And I know that was something that we had talked about when we met. And so I kind of want you to kind of talk about what your thinking is behind that subcommittee.
So that's, the idea behind this subcommittee, and the reason I want to bring it forward to the full committee today, is that I think that when we have smaller groups that can digest information and bring it back to the board, I think that information is better understood in smaller chunks. So when we look at something like the progress report or the budget that the budget meetings that Maurice is attending, or how money is being spent, or we have issues for like around when we were trying to decide or thinking about who would be recording the sessions, that this smaller group would be able to look at those budgetary or financial decisions or agenda items or progress reports that we get from people and kind of synthesize that into a report that's more digestible for us as a committee. So Prosper Portland has a budget. We don't know what it looks like. We may not understand what it looks like, but if Maurice and Haben and Michael got together and kind of broke that down into some chunks for us to understand how it might impact our work, I think that will help us to move us forward when decisions need to be made that may impact. Was that kind of clear?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great idea because the progress report that I'm going over is going to be high level and kind of, it's going to share how much money has been spent as part of the $32 million. The Budget Advisory Committee that Maurice attends really it does not include the $32 million as general fund, but it still impacts this effort. And so we can be able to really kind of, share more details about the impact of our fiscal decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think it would be great because one decision that's coming up is what to do with the money that was allocated to the accessory dwelling unit. That may not be going forward, and so the investment allocation can come up with recommendations and then to share with the Oversight Committee about their thoughts about where those dollars should go, and which of the other 5 strategic areas should we now take that 1.5 and put it. So those, I think it's a great subcommittee.
And this subcommittee could also be ongoing as needed, so maybe may not be one that needs to meet every month, every 2 weeks, but maybe once a quarter. Every time we get a progress report, you guys take this information back and kind of break it down for us and present it to us in smaller chunks so that we're not spending the bulk of the time just trying to understand or comprehend, and that we do understand and comprehend at some level what's being shown in these project reports.
So what's a quarter, every 3 months?
Yeah.
Every 3 months?
As needed.
And as the progress report that I'm going to review today is an annual report, but we will have quarterly reports every 3 months. And also, I believe that the subcommittee can inform the format of the progress report.
So I guess since it's not an official committee yet, we would need to have a motion to entertain it if anybody thinks it's a worthwhile venture to get it included as a part of our subcommittee roster. Any motion?
Yeah, I motion.
Yeah. I second.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Any other questions?
We can try it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so we have a new subcommittee. Yay!
Yay.
I make a motion that Hob and Maurice are,
I'm gonna sign up. That's actually one of the reasons I joined this committee. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
really excited about it.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Shall we move to the next item? One more? Go ahead.
a little bit more. So what Kim and I thought would be a good idea is that each subcommittee would have a lead, and that lead would be in charge of making sure that subcommittee meets, that they choose a time and place, and when that subcommittee most likely can all get together, and they would be the ones that would report back to the larger committee, and kind of help to devise whatever plan, strategic plan, or however that subcommittee is going to move forward with the help of the other subcommittee members. So I know that I spoke to Shannon, and she said she would be willing to be the lead of the community outreach subcommittee. And so if there are others of you who are listed on this list, and you feel like you want to be the lead of that subcommittee, I know Jennifer was acting as the report back person for the cultural hub. This is adding a slight bit more responsibility, so I don't know if you would still feel comfortable acting as that lead.
Yes.
Awesome.
Was that the culture hub or the
I mean-
expansion?
Expansion.
Expansion. yeah.
Expansion, I'm sorry. The expansion. So we would need one for the cultural hub. Maurice, would you be willing to do the project charter?
Yeah, I'll be willing to do the project charter for anyone that someone else isn't interested in doing that my name's associated with.
Okay. All right.
I'll do the new committee member selection. And what's the new one that we just passed?
The investment allocation.
Yeah, I can do that one.
Okay.
Don't cut yourself too
I'll do
thin.
that. I'll do the new committee. Are you not doing the new committee?
Yeah,
You are doing the new committee?
yeah.
Or you're not?
Do you want to switch?
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay.
I can do it if you're, I thought you said you were gonna do something else.
The
What are
new
you doing?
committee member selection.
Okay.
But you want to do the investment too?
Yeah, I want to do the allocation one. If you want to do the new committee member selection, do you want to do
Okay,
that one?
I'll do that one.
Okay.
Perfect.
I can do the, if no one volunteers for the business navigator, that's
Okay.
every 3 years.
All right, so cultural hub,
This one here, right?
If nobody else wants to do it.
Maurice, you
Yeah,
said you would be?
I
Okay,
said I'll do that, yeah.
perfect.
Madam Chair?
I think that was all we wanted to discuss.
The community livability grant? Well, that's pretty staff-driven.
Is it tied to applications mostly and the timing of that?
Yeah.
And I think we need to remove Karis from that committee. She decided that since she was going to represent us with the project working group, that she didn't want to be on that.
Okay.
committee.
Okay,
Wonderful. Good work. Let's move to number 7, which is the decision-making process map. And I will initiate the conversation around this. Let me reference 2 things. One is, if you take a look at this long piece of paper that has on the top of it in the center, Northeast Community Development Initiative Decision-Making Process Map, and then it's color-coded, wonderful. And reference to the charter on the first page at the bottom of the charter. Just a reminder of the responsibility of the Oversight Committee. The Oversight Committee is created to ensure accountability and provide advice for the implementation of the action plan. The primary focus of the action plan is to foster economic empowerment through wealth creation strategies. The Oversight Committee, working with Prosper Portland, will review, advise, and monitor investments according to the strategic policy areas, timelines, metrics, and allocation amounts outlined in the action plan. So what you're looking at is a visual representation to identify how and where decisions from the Oversight Committee will flow. So if you'll take a moment and kind of look through that. Where you recommend, where you make the determination, and then the process with how it works out. And the idea behind it was to make it simple and visual as much as possible so that there's a sense of clarity of the responsibility as well as the authority of this Oversight Committee. So the language from the charter being put into a visual packet to connect the two. Kimberly, did you want to expand any on that?
I would pay attention to the definitions, because that really kind of help you understand what it means to monitor, what it means to inform, and so forth. And then you also notice that the final decision mainly lay with the board and executive director.
But that's all Prosper Portland, right?
Yes. But the preliminary recommendation does really inform the decisions, especially when it comes to programmatic awards and reviewing the annual budget. And so staff will take your recommendations and present them to our executive director for her final decision or her final recommendation to Prosper Portland Board.
So is this Prosper Portland will make the final decision? This is not a community-based decision, but one that finally sits, the final decision will be made after the viewing the recommendations and everything. You will make the final decision, right?
And so, in most cases, depending on how much money is involved, is the Prosper Portland Board will make that final decision.
Right. You didn't make
But Prosper Portland is in that position. But go ahead, Michael.
So we just recommending. I thought we were the Oversight Committee, so I thought we would at least know the final word or set in on the final word. But we.
I wonder if it
We're
was
way up
going
here
down each of the kind of
I think it would be
strategic
beneficial.
areas so you can kind of understand.
I think it would be beneficial, yeah.
Because even though you're in a position to make, preliminary recommendation, it's still very impactful. And so let's kind of go down and kind of like review this so you can kind of understand, because each of the implementation tools are different, and there are some that have a lot of that staff-driven, but then there's others that where you guys will have input into, how much money is allocated to that particular project. So, promote property ownership and redevelopment. Oftentimes, that's implemented by the Prosperity Improvement Program, which is a matching grant program for business owners. And you, through our progress report, will review the annual budget and outreach. And you can make a recommendation on if you feel that money is being used or aligned with the Northeast CDI. You also have the individual awards, and that's really a staff responsibility who work with the property owners and determine what their investment needs are. You kind of monitor that, and you monitor that in our progress report, and you'll see that more tonight when I review the progress report. programmatic changes, you kind of inform that. Say, for instance, you look at the progress report and you say, you know what, I don't think that we're not reaching African Americans. We need to look at ways to target more African Americans to utilize the PIP program. That is how you kind of inform those program changes. Then as we go to promoting property ownership and redevelopment, you again review the annual budget and our outreach. And the annual budget is reflected in our progress report. And that budget was determined when we adopted the plan. But when we adopted the plan, we said this is a living document so that the Oversight Committee can say, hey, you know what? These dollars aren't moving the way we want. Let's move them somewhere else. Or the accessory dwelling unit program is not being supported by the mayor's office, or it's not, that program's not developed the way we had hoped. Let's move it somewhere else. So those are the type of way that you can inform that process. Also, we have loans, the commercial property real estate loans. That's kind of a staff-driven process where we work with different business owners and property owners, and you kind of monitor that implementation through the progress report. And the final decision, depending on how much money those loans are, is made by the board or Kimberly Branham. Also, we have support business growth and ownership. Similar process. You guys will monitor the budget that's been identified and adopted by the action plan, and you will suggest changes if you see that, you know, if there's some adjustments needed. Staff will make the initial recommendation for the loan amount, and that will be approved by the executive director or the board. And the same with the program changes too. If you feel that there need to be, you know, some changes to the way that the money is being spent or who utilizes the funds. And things get a little bit different with the Invest in New and Existing Homeowners because that program is administered by the Portland Housing Bureau, and that's administered and authorized by intergovernment agency agreement that is reviewed and approved by Prosper Portland Board. And their staff is the one that makes the individual awards. They have the authority based on a program guidelines that aligns with the intergovernment agreement, and that IGA is approved by Kimberly Branham and the Prosper Portland Board. However, the same, you can monitor the spending of that money through the progress report, or you can determine, you know, in this case, the ADU program may not be going forward, and you can suggest where that money goes because it is funded by the $32 million. So you guys have the ability to monitor and to inform and to suggest program changes. And Advanced Community Livability Grant, you guys make the preliminary recommendations about the proposals. That process, you are really kind of engaged in reviewing and making decisions about who received the funds, and your recommendation is forwarded to Kimberly Branham for final decision. And if in most cases, your decision is approved by Kimberly Branham. And the Cultural Hub is going to be very similar to that as well. Once we develop a notice of funding availability, or however we choose to kind of implement those funds, if there are proposals, submitted by development teams, then we'll have a subcommittee. The cultural hub will review those proposals and make a preliminary recommendation that will be forwarded to Kimberly Branham for her final decision. And as in the back of the plan, we have what we call outcomes for new practices and policies. And one of those is improved marketing and outreach, and that's really our community outreach subcommittee. And that subcommittee is designed to help broaden our outreach. And you will make, we'll create a community outreach strategy that will be approved by Kimberly Branham, and funds will be allocated to implement that strategy. And finally, we have hiring professional service loans and I'm trying to remember what this, I think that's supposed to be hiring professional services, not loans, but that's when we have professional contractors, like Dr. Holt, and which is kind of you guys will inform us, the staff, about, well, you know what, we need a facilitator. So we will take your recommendation and try to procure a consultant as needed. And then finally, we have making minor amendment to the Interstate URA. We have the URA Expansion Committee who's going to make a recommendation, and we'll forward that recommendation to Kimberly Branham and for her final decision if the or final recommendation, and then she will forward her final recommendation to the board. And it could possibly be a city council decision if it's if the amendment is a larger area than 40 acres. So, but I'm hoping that kind of gives you an idea of the influence you have, and even though the final decision rests on sometimes the Prosper Portland Board, but which is a very public process, so you'll still be involved in providing input on the final decision, because, for instance, minor amendments will have to go to, will be approved at a Prosper Portland Board meeting, and so you can have influence there. And so any final decisions will be discussed in an open forum.
Questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It seems like pretty consistently across the board, the Portland Housing Bureau staff has the final decision on individual grants. If you could explain that decision, and also
Because the Portland Housing Bureau implements our housing program.
so for the business growth and ownership.
Where is
She's on number 2.
number 2?
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers 1 and 2 don't deal explicitly in housing.
Tenant improvements.
I'm not understanding, I'm sorry.
So if you look at section number 2, where it says support business growth and ownership, and if we go to tenant TI loans, individual awards, if you go over to the Portland Housing Bureau section, it says final decision if no exception. I believe that's your question.
Oh,
Or I'm just recognizing that there's a pattern for individual grants.
it's either Prosper Portland or the Portland Housing Bureau.
That's confusing.
But in this case, it would be Prosper Portland.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
So I just wanted for members that weren't here at the last board meeting to just talk about what.
Thank you very much. For a point of order and/or flow, that if you have something you'd like to say as one of the Oversight Committee members, we're asking you to take your name tag, stand it on end, and I will make sure to call you. That way we can keep everybody from speaking all at the same time, especially for those who are on the phone. Maurice.
Yeah, I think this is very helpful. I think this was some of the information that we're looking for, just as far as roles and responsibilities. One of the things I don't see on is timelines. So from going to left to right on this sheet, how long does that take? And also, we're looking at expending these funds over the next 5 years. So I'd imagine we'd want to start expending them pretty quickly, because I think we're quite a ways behind if we're going to spend the money. And so then it becomes, okay, where are the priorities? How do we see this is the first thing we're doing? Obviously, I'd like to see the money get out the gate quicker or sooner rather than later. And so how do we actually make sure that this process is flowing as quickly as we can potentially have it? And can Prosper Portland or Portland Housing Bureau provide us with what they look at as their schedule so that we can make sure that we're aligning with the schedule that you guys envision?
I think that's a great suggestion, and I will add the timeline. And the next time you receive the progress report, we want to be a little bit more detailed too. And so we even have a format in mind that I'll share with the committee that will kind of look at the budget and the amount that's been allocated as to date, so that you'll know how much money. And like, for instance, right now, I think 11% of the funds have been spent to date, which is, like you said, is not much. And so that's why we want to work on the community outreach. We want to get that going pretty quick so we can get the word out and get, so we can start seeing the dollars go out the door.
Okay,
But I think that's a great idea. We'll add the timeline.
Leisha.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, for our preliminary recommendations that end with Prosper Portland staff, are our recommendations weighted at all?
Yes, they are. In most cases, our preliminary recommendation is weighed by your input. I mean, you'll see it would be, your input would be integrated into our preliminary recommendation.
And so, and when talking about transparency, will these be written documents? How will our recommendations leave from here? If it's more than a vote, yay or nay, doesn't necessarily tell the story of how we got to that final recommendation. So how will those recommendations?
It really depends on the situation, but we can, discuss what would be a good process to kind of formalize that. I know we talked about maybe having Dr. Holt kind of guide the subcommittee through kind of how to make a formal recommendation. And Alicia and I was thinking maybe, all the subcommittee leads or whoever want to could come to a session where you kind of help us maybe develop tools and to create those final
Absolutely.
recommendations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Leisha. Were you?
Sorry.
Thank you. Shanisha?
This is all good and everything, but what bothers me a little bit is the fact that it's like saying we the people and the people are not there. And it's like, so when we talk about community-based outreach and services, it's rare, and when I talk to the community itself, most of them are not aware that even these initiatives exist. And so it's like, so is it gonna be the process of the committees to be able to get that out into the community? Or I mean, how is that going? Is it gonna be on maybe your site to let them know? How do we do the initial work to get the community aware that there is options and there is funding and things of that nature? Because when I'm just talking to community-based organizations or people within stuff, it's like they're not aware that this money exists.
Yeah, that is a concern of mine as well, and I think our community outreach strategy should have to be two-pronged. One is making people aware of the tools and products that we have, and also making them aware of the Oversight Committee meetings, so that they can come and provide their input. So we're gonna really, I'm hoping that the subcommittee will look at, start to develop a strategy for for, you know,
For the outreach.
reaching everyone, you know, that could benefit from these tools, and not just those in the interstate, but also those who are living in East County that may want to come back or may want to utilize some business opportunities in the interstate corridor urban renewal area.
I just want to respond to Ms. Smith. real
To Janisha. Mhm.
quick. So,
Janisha, if you're done, you can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
the subcommittee will come up with a strategic plan on how we want to approach this. But I want to just say now, and Dr. Holt can maybe speak to this if you hold a session with the leads, is that what your role is specifically is to give Prosper Portland staff the initiative or the work that you want them to do, right? That they would be in charge of doing, that fits in line with your strategic plan that the subcommittee comes up with. So the onus is not necessarily all on you as an individual to get this word out. Prosper Portland is the mechanism that we need to use to get the word out to the community. That plan that you come up with on the subcommittee can inform that, but this is not your 9 to 5, so I don't want you to feel that pressure of feeling like this is something that you have to do, but you need to hold them accountable to do the things that you want them to do, if that makes sense. And that goes for everybody, because I think we can start to feel overwhelmed and we'll lose people, and you know, we're coming to meet one Thursday a month and we're doing some subcommittees, but we have to get into the habit of giving Kimberly and Prosper Portland to say, this is what we're looking for. Can you are the experts in this, can you please go out and do this?
In terms of implementation, absolutely. But in terms of strategy and in terms of thought, in terms of engagement, then that's the responsibility of the Oversight Committee to think through all of those elements. Well, or each of those. Haben.
I was going to respond to you. I think from the get-go, I think a big concern we had as a committee is that our outreach is not working. So I think that's what the subcommittee would do, is what has been done so far and that hasn't been working, and what can we do to outreach more, and what's a strategy that's going to work. And I think as a subcommittee, we'll have more time to kind of look at data and information and see the things that work and that don't work, and then bring it to the whole committee, and then we can discuss and we can, you know, put that on the staff to make sure that that's implemented. And we can give them, you know, the information we collected and say, hey, you guys have been outreaching this way and it hasn't been effective, like this community is not being served, and this is the recommendation we came with, and let's implement this. As I think what I see the committee doing, the subcommittee doing.
Nice.
Thank you. Haben, if you'd put your name tag down. Maurice.
So I just have a quick question. And so the subcommittees are going to come up with a plan, right? And we're going to inform the public about this plan. And then we're going to come up with recommendations. And then the recommendations are either going to be determined by the PDC board or the director or potentially City Hall. Now, if we go through this process and the community is on board and says, okay, we like what you guys are putting together, and then we make this recommendation, and that recommendation is either greatly changed or just not accepted, what is the firewall for us when the community is looking at us saying, you said you're doing this, we went to your meetings, we've engaged, and now all of a sudden you're not doing it. So how is Prosper Portland looking at protecting us as committee members on those decisions that aren't under our control?
That's a good question, and I think if we ever get to that situation, that you'll be well informed of why we chose not to agree or approve your recommendation, and that the protection I believe you have is that they know that that decision was made by Prosper Portland and not the Oversight Committee, and that it was, and I think that at that point you shouldn't be surprised
Can
we
I
should
also-
never be surprised by that,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
our disapproval of your recommendation.
Okay. No, I think it's important to keep that constant communication between us and Prosper Portland. If you feel like there is a direction that we're going that you feel like it's not going to pass through the gate, but on the same end of it, to inform us on your decision is one thing, but to inform the public on why that decision was not accepted is another thing. And I think it's up to Prosper Portland or whoever makes the decision to not go with the recommendation to inform the public or to come to this meeting and explain their decision. It's not important that we know your decision, but it's important that the public knows the decision.
And so if I can speak to two things, Maurice, I think part of the responsibility and one of the reasons to create this is to also make sure that as people begin to attend the meetings, that they understand the process as well, that they understand the limitations, they understand the scope and the reach of the Oversight Committee. I think that's one part that's necessary, is that the community is clear on how this committee functions and operates. The second thing I think that this committee has the opportunity to do is, once a decision is made, is then to ask those individuals and/or a representative group of the Prosper Portland Board to come and have a meeting with the Oversight Committee to explain that process with the community being present. That's part of the leverage of the Oversight Committee. So it isn't just a private discussion, it also has this opportunity for public engagement.
And I'd even go one step further. If they do a written response to the recommendation and why it's been turned down, I'd rather be able to hand someone a piece of paper and say it was out of our control than rather to sit there and say, please come to this meeting on this date to hear why it was out of our control. So I think a decent request would be, say, for everything that is not accepted by this committee, that we have a written response to the entity to say the why they're not accepting our recommendation.
Absolutely. Vicki, Gwen?
I want to go back to something Shanisha had mentioned, and I think it's just having enough information to feel informed. Many of us are in this community and serving on this, so we may not be the final decision makers, or this is not our job, and I appreciate what you said. But it's feeling like you had enough information, and I'll go back to one of the first meetings when I asked the question, who is the pool? How many people in the demographic can this impact? So, and fit within the income criteria. And then I think we will feel comfortable knowing what's a realistic figure. And then how, we can ask the question, how are you targeting these specific people? For instance, hypothetical, the people who fit the demographic may live on XYZ street, but we're reaching out to A street. So I think that's kind of the background information that we're trying to get, who we're dealing with. And we could say, I don't know how many African Americans and African immigrants live in Portland metro area. Let's say 10,000, but there may be only 1,000 fit this. So I think that's kind of what you're saying is,
ma'am. Thank you.
whether we have enough information to feel that we are reaching the people that we need to reach.
Excellent.
You want me to answer that?
Does that make sense?
It does, and we actually had some really great conversations with Lisa and Maurice about an impact study. And I actually reached out to Dr. Lisa Bake to maybe do that study for us. And she's, while she's not available to do that, but she is going to help us scope, provide the scope of work, and so that we can go out with a contract to find someone to kind of look at the demographics in the area, and also mainly to look at, when we're making decisions, how do those decisions impact the people in the community? And Maurice, exactly, this is his kind of a request that he made in the very beginning. He could talk more about what he's hoping to get out of this study.
Yeah,
Well,
so
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so that, yeah, the impact study would hopefully, what it does is looks at who's in the area, who's in the surrounding areas, and making sure what we do positively affects African Americans, and kind of taking that data and then using that data to make our decisions throughout this process. So we looked at that as being like one of the first steps that we should do is see what that impact study reveals to us so that we can make educated decisions on how best to spend these funds.
Thank you very much. Shanisha.
I'm done. Vicki, thank you. You said exactly what I didn't say.
Perfect, perfect. Any other questions then about the process map? Thank you very much. Yes.
So on policy area 2, support business growth and ownership, and then the tools, on all of the column for the tools, it highlight tenant and loans improvement. So I'm looking at the progress report, the other document, and I want to make sure that the tools or the language we put in here is reflective of, if we talk about ownership, I'm just assuming the loans or TI improvement. If Kimberly can clarify that in this column, it's also promoting or engaging, or the goal is to promote ownership to beyond the tenant improvement. So if Kimberly, you can clarify that this is part of the goal is to promote ownership, not just tenant improvement.
I'm not sure if I totally understand your question.
If you could restate it, and make sure, everyone can make sure not to hit your mics.
My question is essentially, if you can clarify on the support business growth and ownership. I'm not understanding the math here, but under that category, and then the tool to achieve that is tenant TI loans improvement, TI loans, but it doesn't discuss or mention a tool could be. I'm just not sure what tenant improvement, how does that promote ownership? My understanding is tenant improvement is just the outside, maybe inside, but it's not helping the business achieve ownership.
Maurice, you want to respond to that? And then I'll follow up.
Well, I was just going to say, I think I understand what he's trying to say is basically, or what he said, and that is that a tenant improvement, if you don't necessarily own the building, so what is the process to actually help people actually have business ownership into the structure that they're in, rather than just helping them do a storefront improvement,
Okay.
for example.
And I just didn't get the connection with the TI and the home ownership, but we are, when we, oftentimes our TI loans are implemented by our PIP program. On our PIP application, we ask if you own that building, because we understand how, if you're a tenant and this money is provided to the property owner, well, anytime you have a tenant improvement loan, it improves the building, and it helps the building owner more than the tenant, if the tenant does not own that building. So we try to, we're very careful about how many dollars are given to the property owner, and we also ask if that property owner is a person of color, because we want to make sure that those dollars are fulfilling the purpose of the initiative is to economic prosperity for long-term property owners and people of color. So we are very sensitive to that, and because we don't want to invest $75,000 into a building for a tenant who's going to be evicted or priced out. And so we also have programs that encourage or try to help business owners become property owners. And so we kind of want to provide not only money for tenant improvements, but we have wraparound services to kind of encourage business owners to become property owners. And so they won't be in that position of being priced out of the business, and we won't be in a position of investing in a property on behalf of a tenant who's going to be priced out, you know, in the future. So we are very aware of that, and it's a challenge because you want to make sure that there are spaces, affordable spaces available for business owners who don't own property, but at the same time, you want to position them to be in a place to become property owners. So it's not a black and white issue. It's very complex, but we're very aware of that, and we have specific on our application. We're very intentional on identifying if who is the property owner, and also the grant goes with the property, so you can only receive so many funds. So we want to make sure that we're not our funds are not going to repeat users, and that there's a limit to how much a property owners can receive. So,
Con, did that answer your question?
Yes, but I have a follow-up question. So in the existing homeownership category, it mentioned down payment assistance to help achieve the ownership. I wonder if it makes sense that in addition to, in the small supported business category and ownership, if it makes sense we add a tool that not only TI loans, but state clearly that there's a tool to achieve ownership.
mm-hmm.
Because for when I read the sport business growth and the tools that to achieve it, doesn't really clearly state that here's how we can achieve full ownership. Because to me, looking at TI loans, it's just a tenant improvement, and from that context, it's simply helping the tenant rather than the owners.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a category in the same box that says, we will help support with payment assistance or something in that context to help achieve ownership. Right now, I just reading that is really mainly around renters and tenants rather than ownership.
I agree with that. That actually came up during our community forums about having maybe a similar program for business owners, a down payment assistance program. And maybe that's something that the Oversight Committee can, wrestle with when, if there's, different additional dollars, and maybe creating or maybe presenting a proposal to create such a program, and working with Prosper Portland to do that.
Con, note, point well taken, and I think an opportunity to follow up on that is accessible through dialoguing with other committee members to make that a specific goal. Any other questions or comments in regard to the decision-making process? Matt? All right. Ready to move to the next item? Very good. Year-end report, Kimberly.
And just briefly, like I said earlier, 11% of the dollars have been implemented so far. So roughly $3 million or $3,500,000 have been implemented out of the $32 million in year one. We're now entering year two, and so far, 26 property owners have received $1.5 million of PIP funds, and 12 business owners have received $607,000 of PIP funds, which is our most robust, successful program. And the PIP program is a matching, a matching program where a property owner or business owner can receive up to $75,000 to improve their property, and they have to bring in like a 25% match. And only in the Interstate Corridor urban renewal area is the match able to be financed, and we provide like a micro loan so that if an owner does not have that $25,000 or whatever the match is, 25% of the total project up to 75,000, they will have the opportunity to finance that. And it's a great program. The program is a new program that was integrated 3 old programs, the DOS, the storefront program, and our green feature program was rolled into this new PIP program, which is a very popular product. And if you look at the chart to your right, you will see the breakdown of the PIP program per demographics. 15% of the dollars have gone to African immigrants, 44% have gone to African Americans, 38% of those funds were provided to Asians, and 3% of those dollars was received by Latino community. Also, we had one property development loan, which is the $25,000 micro loan that was given to a PIP recipient. So far, there's no large-scale projects that have gone out the door, and there's no tenant improvement funds that have gone out. There has been 3 home repair program recipients. 2 of them were African American, and 1 was white, with a total of $120,000. And also, there was 15 community livability grant programs grant that was given out, with a total of $1.14 million. Interstate urban renewal area is the largest urban renewal area, and they received the most funding for the community livability grant. And there's no activity with the cultural business hub. Are there any questions?
Maurice?
So on the grant recipients that you have here, are they new to getting grants from Prosper Portland, or are they just
Repeat users? Most of them have been new recipients, like Constructing Hope was the first time they received, and they received quite a large grant from us. The Billy Webb Lodge, they received two CGL grants, but they were the first time that they ever received those funds. We also funded a school district, and that was the first time they received funds. Well, it was a school program.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It was a Bravo, and that was the first time they received those funds. So there was a lot of first time.
Okay. Would it be possible to have basically a little bit more of a breakdown with ones that are for-profit, nonprofit, and just first recipients and repeat recipients?
Sure. And we do have a maximum, so once you receive $300,000, you're no longer eligible for the funds. So.
Shanisha?
My question is also in relationship to, did we ever come to the point that those people who have served on the committees would not be eligible for the certain funds? You know, if you served, more community-based, and if you served, would that cut you from the eligibility?
We did talk about that, and you're eligible if you're not in the position of making a decision about the funds. So you can't serve on the Community Livability Grant Subcommittee if you're involved with an organization that's seeking the funds. And you can't, you have to be very careful. You should not be a member of the Cultural Hub, Business Hub, if you plan on submitting a development proposal.
So that is a no.
So, yes, but if you're not, if you're not in a position of making a decision, then you're eligible to serve on those various committees. You just can't be in a position of making a decision if you're going to personally benefit from that.
And the last question I had was in relationship to those properties that were being taken out of. We were going to discuss that differently, right? This wasn't part of the committee, but is there going to be maybe a review of that property that was taken out just because in 2003, I think, is when they made a decision to take certain parts out of the interstate corridor areas? And will that maybe eventually be put back, because that's my property? So,
But we'll look at those, and we'll talk more about that. And I need to kind of talk to our attorney about your role in terms of making a recommendation about that amendment if it includes your property.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Maurice.
just really quickly as well, as far as a lot of those proposals we had looked at, what's Prosper Portland doing? In their proposals, they had a series of things that, whether it was like developers or, contractors who they were using, architects on who they were using, and so on throughout the construction process. What's Prosper Portland doing to assure that what they said in their proposal they're actually doing?
And is this relating to
It's not
Cultural Hub or the?
Some of the previous grants that you, not Constructing Hope, so I don't want to just throw that out there. But I'm just saying that I know that a lot of people write these proposals and they look really glossy and look really nice, and they say how much they're going to engage the community and what they're going to do. What are we doing to assure that what they said that they're going to do, as far as Prosper Portland, that they actually do it? What is your tracking mechanism?
Well, for both the PIP and the CLG, there's a 20%. There's a requirement that you use 20% of the work with minorities and disadvantaged contractors.
MWESB.
So, pardon me.
MWESB.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
Minority, women, emerging small businesses.
And so I guess my kind of blanket concern is on several of them where we were reviewing, we were very impressed with their team as far as their utilization of those firms. And they went beyond just the Prosper Portland requirement, right? And that was one of the reasons why we thought their proposal was really strong. Now, on the side of accountability, making sure that they actually do that, because if I tell you, let's say I'm going to use 75% utilization and I'm selected for that project, and then I turn around and go to 20%, and I feel like that's a little bait and switch. So how is Prosper Portland ensuring what they said that they were going to do in the proposal, they actually do it?
I think it's kind of built into our process because our application has been streamlined over the years to kind of make it a easier process to access the funds and to go through the whole approval process. But once that goes from approval to a project manager, we monitor the invoices. We make sure that each of the applicants provide we have I'm going to back up. We have a letter of agreement that starts the process, and it's based on a budget template. It's based on the bids that identify who the contractors will be. So it's kind of built into that process to make sure that they meet our guidelines for the diversity goals. And it's a very hands-on process where our project managers are available and working with the applicants. And part of it probably is kind of a trust issue, but the invoices and the bids should show who those contractors are, and so we'll know that,
And so on those contractors and developers, if you could keep this group posted on any types of substitutions. So if a minority firm gets substituted with a majority firm, I think this group would really like to know that. If a utilization is high for workforce and gets greatly reduced, I think this group would be interested to know that, especially as we expend these funds. I would like to see the highest utilization of people in the neighborhood and people that look like us on those projects. And if we don't monitor it, it could potentially be problematic.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll definitely can
Thank
keep an eye on that. It would be very helpful if you could give us some ideas. As you know, as a contractor, you know the tricks that you could help us prevent that.
We can talk offline.
Leisha.
So I was just looking at the first progress report from January to June and comparing it to the year-end report. And so I wanted to know, under the Prosperity Investment Program matching grant program, there's Latino 3%, 44,000 in this new report. And in the old report, it says 13.6%, 44. So that may just be a typo.
No, or I think it's just when you...
It's changed, the percentage just
The
changed.
percentage
because-
changes.
Okay.
Because of the amount of money.
Yeah, so with the Asian, the amount of money has like quadruple or more. So I'm wondering if there's any information that you can provide to us on why or how? Is that one person, or what, was it the outreach was different? How, if you can account for that?
I honestly think it's word of mouth. You see, communities and helping each other, and, the word is spreaded in their communities faster than they spread it in other communities. I'm seeing that also among the African immigrant communities too, that, and right now it's kind of word of mouth, so I think it's really kind of an organic process now that's happening.
For the Asian community?
For both the Asian and the
African
immigrant communities, as you see, different people come in, I could see, you could kind of see that, the word is out in certain communities and not others,
Yeah. And is that because of the word is good? Is there more success stories in certain communities? I would tend to believe that I'm going to share with my friends successes that would make them want to engage and participate.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount for the African American community went up as well over the course of the year, but that just was a really big jump for me for the Asian community. So it would be nice to know if there's information that we can use, real information that we can use when we have the strategy, the strategic planning around outreach that would help to increase those numbers for the Latino, for African American, or whoever we're outreaching for. So I think having a little bit more depth in this progress report, and maybe that's the place for the subcommittees, but.
I think that's a good insight.
Thank you, Dorsey. Leisha, if you.
On the applications, do we
Alicia.
have a question that's asking how they hear about the program?
I don't think we do. That could be a good idea.
Answer that.
Say it one more time.
What did you say?
On the application, is there a question that's asking how they hear about the program or the grant? Because that way that would answer our question as well.
Excellent, great discussion. Any other question or comment in regard to the year-end report? Very well done. Thank you so much. We have a few moments left, and there's an opportunity for public comment. I don't know if you, sir, have anything you wanted to say in regard to tonight's moment. Well, we'd love to hear from you. No? You have to come to the mic because we need to capture it. We've got some people on the phone who would need to hear you, and then also it is being recorded, and we want to capture your thoughts. So you have, if I can get my clock to go, I'm going to give you 4 minutes.
I just want to, my name is Richard Brown, and I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing. As I was listening, I heard a lot of issues that came up, that have come up in the past, and they or problems that were in the past that came up in these conversations. And a lot of times, they were problems because people didn't know what questions to ask. And it's evident to me that you all are getting information from somewhere, maybe it's just intuition, about the problems that we've had in the communities in the past. And the city, or the city, y'all from the city?
Yeah.
The city is obviously paying attention to the problems that have come up in the communities before. So I want you all to know that I appreciate the work that you're doing, having been in the community a long time, listening to these issues and feeling like it isn't going anywhere, and we're telling the same stories over and over and over again. I think this was a break from that, and it was refreshing. I heard you talking about the information getting out. Especially with new people to the country, I think that a lot of times just because they don't speak the language, information goes through their communities fast. I think for us folks that have been here for 400 years, we have become so distrustful of each other that we don't pass the word around. And that's what we've got to get around. We've got to figure out how to bring people to the table and give them information, whether we agree with them or not. And I think that's been missing. And, you know, I make that a challenge to you. How do we get these folks who don't agree? I don't like what you're doing because you said this or you said that. How do we get them the same information with the same enthusiasm so that they'll want to pick up on it? Thanks again.
Thank you.
I didn't catch your name, but we're looking for another member, and you'll be great.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. We appreciate it very much. And I would ask if you would be kind enough to share your experience with your warm market, with your group, with the relationships that you have, because one of the things that's beneficial is someone else's testimony, someone else's lived experience as things are shifting and as things are turning. So that was great feedback. Thank you very much.
Because like I say, I tell my neighbors, but all of my neighbors are not black anymore, so they're newcomers.
Yeah.
And they eat it up just like, yeah.
Madam Chair, is there anything else that you need to address?
I don't know if we haven't done this maybe historically, but just to let you all know, Kimberly, myself, Hobbin, Dr. Holt, and Tori, we are trying to meet after these meetings to come up with the next agenda and whatever needs to be discussed going forward. So at the end of these meetings, if there's questions or issues that you would like to see on the next agenda, or you can email me and let me know, that may be helpful in making sure we include your ideas as we format that agenda. So if there's anything that anybody has to share tonight, I'll take it now, but if you want to email me or text, I love texting. You can text me.
And I just want to add that we do meet on the following Monday, so you need to let her know soon.
Wonderful. Great meeting. Thank you each for being here. Good to see you. I think that the meeting was tremendous and very successful. So any comment from those on the phone? Con or Shannon?
They're on mute.
Yes, make sure you've unmuted if you're saying anything. Well, then, to that end, we are going to end our meeting, and I'll let you dismiss. Our next gathering is scheduled for February 15th at this location at the same time.
Is that in relationship to what you were asking about, Robin?
I was saying that we would maybe make the applications due on the 5th, so that we have time to review, go to Kim for final approval, and then we have someone at this table by next meeting.
Yes, this is the regularly scheduled meeting,
Yeah.
the 15th. All right.
I'm just so happy to see everyone here. We have quorum. This is like the biggest attendance we've had in a while. So thank you for everyone coming out tonight. And with that, I think that we are adjourned and you are dismissed.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.